You know, I was really expecting like a nice, simple traveling episode, but instead we got one of the most intense and craziest moments of Campaign 2 so far. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Aftermath series. Let us waste no time at all and dive right into this week's episode of Critical Role. So we start off this episode with the party traversing this tundra landscape in the north. It's definitely a lot different than Nicodranus, which they were in only a few days before. Now, there's only a few things that I want to talk about before we get into the good stuff, but one particular thing that I want to highlight is Caduceus Clay licking the air, or trying to taste it. I didn't think I could love Caduceus Clay even more than I already did, but once again, he just proves that he's such an adorable, lovable cowboy. And this whole time they're traveling through the snow, leading up to the mountain and into the cave, Clay was just so optimistic, so happy, so giddy. It was just such a cute thing to see. Oh, and side note, I am super loving this Nordic music that Matt has going on in the north. Anyways, moving on, the party eventually makes their way into the kiln, and we had a beautiful family reunion of Caduceus Clay and the Dusts. There's just something very special about this moment. We know that Clay had his doubts very early on when he joined the group, and we've seen him grow so much since then, and it's nice to see that, in his eyes, everything he's done has finally paid off, especially with what Fjord says to Clay later on in the episode. Fjord says that he looks up to Clay and admires him, which then Clay responds to with, well, that makes this all worth it in my eyes. But oh man, was this episode filled with all kinds of lore, and a couple nods and connections to the first campaign, the main one being Whitestone, and then a minor one, the Core Anvil. It was clear that some of the members of the party were trying to push to go to Whitestone, but they're going to have to go elsewhere to find their residuum. However, if the party did go to Whitestone, I'm sure Matt would have it so that Percy and Vex weren't in the area during the time of the Mighty Nine's stay. But now, let us get into one of the most badass moments of Campaign 2 so far. It starts off on a rather light note with Fjord sending a message to Vandarin, and Vandarin does respond, but it seems that Vandarin is retired, as he said, so it's possible that in Vandarin's mind, he's kind of put everything behind him. I'm sure many years ago, Vandarin would have been ecstatic to hear of Fjord, but now that he's sort of moved past it all and accepted what could have happened, he's sort of, whatever about it. But it's clear that Fjord really does want to reconnect with Vandarin, especially after seeing Clay reunite with his family and how happy he was. It probably sparked something in Fjord, something that he may have forgotten about. We know that Fjord never really did have a family, but Vandarin was kind of like a father figure to him, so it would make sense that he wants to reconnect with him somehow. And then we had an adorable follow-up conversation with Fjord and Jester. Jester being 100% supportive of Fjord, saying how they're gonna find Vandarin and take on and separate Fjord from Uk'otoa together. This is their new mission. Ugh, I just love them so much. And then, Fjord had a dream or nightmare that night, where Uk'otoa once again appeared, telling him to find, take, and consume. I can only assume that the find is in reference to potentially Vandarin. Take, I'm guessing that Vandarin may actually have one of the keys, and he's holding on to it for safekeeping so that no one else can use it to unlock Uk'otoa. And then consume, well, we all know what that means. And I'm sure Fjord put those pieces together too, and that may have been what tipped the scales for Fjord. That would mean betraying the only person he's really seen as a family. And that is the absolute last thing Fjord wants to do. Because we even heard Fjord say that he wouldn't do anything to keep his powers. So I would definitely assume that he wouldn't kill Vandarin. And then after the dream, we had the sequence of Fjord stabbing himself with the falchion, powerless, trying to coerce Uk'otoa into giving his powers back, or else. He then approached the basin filled with lava intimidating Ukitoa once again, and then dripping some of his blood into the lava, causing this swirl of smoke to form around him. Possibly the darkness of Ukitoa trying to intimidate Fjord back down. However, that did not work, as then Fjord threw the falchion into the magma, which was absolutely unbelievably shocking. My jaw immediately dropped, but I'm sure as many of you was so proud of him for finally standing up to Ukitoa. We've seen time and time again Fjord being pushed down, used as a pawn so many times, manipulated, and he finally broke out of that. Being a pawn of Ukitoa probably brought him back to his younger years when he was being bullied. You probably saw Ukitoa as a bully, which he really is. And so him finally standing up to Ukitoa is kind of like him also standing up to the bullies from when he was young. He did something for himself, something he hopes is the right choice. But it really is clear that Fjord feels like he doesn't need Ukitoa anymore. He's surrounded by people he cares about. He saw Clay reunite with his family. He sees how strong the familial bond is. He doesn't need the bond with Ukitoa anymore. And oh my gosh, the morning after, when Fjord had to tell everyone that his accent wasn't real and that he's powerless, I was almost in tears with how wholesome this moment was, where the rest of the party members were giving him magical items, just giving him weapons, trying to reassure him that he still has value, they still need him, they still want him, they want to protect him, they know he can protect us, they know he's a good talker. It was just, it was so cute seeing them all uplift Fjord's spirits, trying to make him feel like he belongs still. I'm almost tearing up just talking about it again. But this does mean a lot of interesting things. We'll have to see where Fjord goes next. Is he going to become a champion of the Wild Mother and sort of switch to a Celestial Warlock instead? And now the party is going into Utherdurn to try to repair this sword that Clay has collected through their travels. And it will act as a gift to Fjord, which might be what he needs to become a champion of the Wild Mother. Only time will tell, and the next episode is going to be a live show, so we already know it's going to be epic. But with all of that being said, we are going to wrap up. Let me know all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions during this episode. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic rest of your weekend, and I will see you all next week.